Chapter 1. The Unexpected Arrival. Dr. Elira Tather had always prided herself on being an expert in interspecies biology and medicine. A highly respected alien nurse with a reputation for her clinical expertise in the medical research station located on the planet Elther, she was known for her ability to adapt to any situation. Elther was home to a vast array of different species alien races, each with their own unique physiology, health concerns, and diseases. It was the perfect environment for someone like Elira, someone who had dedicated her entire career to understanding the nuances of alien biology. Her job was to treat and heal, to find cures where none existed, and to build stronger relationships with every race that came through the research station. But she never anticipated that her expertise would be challenged by the arrival of a human patient, an enigma of a species that had baffled the galaxy for years. Humans were, by their very nature, chaotic. Their physiology was far more resilient than most, but their minds were a different matter entirely. Over the centuries, humans had encountered diseases, plagues, and even biological warfare, yet their race had survived through sheer willpower, often defying all odds. Their emotional responses were volatile, unpredictable, sometimes erratic, and, to put it bluntly, they had an uncanny ability to resist the most lethal forms of pathogens. But they were also prone to injury, to illogical decisions that could result in physical harm, and to sickness brought on by their own recklessness. Elira had heard countless reports from colleagues about their strange ways, how they could thrive in toxic environments, yet succumb to basic illnesses that would not even faze most other species. But it wasn't until a human male was brought into her care that she began to truly grasp the inexplicable nature of these creatures. It was a quiet day in the medical ward of the station when the emergency alarms blared, signaling the arrival of a new patient. Elira had been preparing a dose of anti-inflammatory serum for one of the regular alien species under her care when the automated doors swung open and the emergency team wheeled in a human. The first thing Elira noticed was the way the human was sprawled across the bed, his body seeming far too large for the narrow structure. His dark hair clung to his sweaty forehead, and his chest rose and fell with shallow, labored breaths. His skin was pale, his body covered in a series of lacerations that looked to have come from a wild animal attack. Yet there was something about him that caught her off guard. His features were rough and angular, yet there was a strange softness in his eyes, even as he was barely conscious. Elira felt a rush of emotions, a blend of curiosity, confusion, and a small hint of discomfort. Humans were strange, but this one seemed different from the ones she had read about in her studies. His vitals are unstable, Doctor. He was found in the eastern jungle on Elther, some kind of animal attack. It appears he fought it off, but there's significant blood loss, one of the medical assistants informed her as they rushed to stabilize the patient. Elira nodded sharply, her mind already shifting into clinical mode. There was no time for hesitation. She immediately began examining the human's injuries, noting the deep gouges along his arm, the jagged lacerations on his torso, and the faint burn marks on his legs. Yet despite the severe nature of his wounds, there was something oddly resilient about him, something that puzzled her, something that made her think this human was no ordinary patient. She had treated countless species in her career, many of them with far more complex physiologies, but there was something about the human body that both intrigued and baffled her. Her fingers moved with practiced precision as she activated the healing devices above him, the soft hum of the advanced technology filling the air. As the machinery began to assess the human's body, Elira focused on his wounds, applying a regenerative serum to close the deep gashes. The serum worked quickly, sealing the tissue with an efficiency that left her slightly astounded. Humans, fragile, chaotic humans, had this incredible ability to heal far faster than other species, a fact that many alien doctors had long dismissed as nothing more than legend. Yet, here she was, watching his wounds close with a rapidity that defied all logic. As the machine continued its work, Elira took a moment to observe the patient. His breathing had steadied, and his body temperature was returning to normal, but she still couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to him than the typical human. The human species had a tendency to get under the skin of the other species within the galaxy, particularly with their highly emotional nature. And yet, in this moment, Alyra was reminded of the complexities of their existence. She could feel her curiosity rising, a question hanging in the air that she couldn't quite name. After several moments, the human stirred. His eyes fluttered open, his vision blurry. Alyra watched as his hand twitched, his fingers slowly moving to his side, as if trying to grasp something familiar. He groaned, wincing in pain, his head lolling toward her. "Where am I?" he muttered hoarsely, his voice rough and raw from exhaustion. Alyra's heart skipped a beat. The human's voice was thick with confusion and vulnerability, emotions she had never associated with the beings who were often seen as brash and untamed. But this one seemed different. "You're at the Elther Medical Research Station," she replied, her tone calm and measured as she leaned over him. "You've sustained significant injuries, but we've begun the healing process. You're safe here." He blinked a few times, his eyes focusing on her. She could see the confusion in his gaze, the way his brows furrowed as if trying to make sense of his surroundings. I remember, there was something," he began, trailing off. His hand shot out toward her, grabbing hold of her arm with surprising strength. "You've got to help me, my team, they're still out there." Alyra's heart raced as she felt the raw urgency in his grip. Despite his physical fragility, there was something undeniable about the force of his presence. His hand held her with a strength that spoke not only of desperation, but also of sheer determination. "Your team?" she asked, her voice softened with concern. She knew the jungle outside was a dangerous place, filled with unpredictable wildlife. Had this human and his companions been caught in some kind of wildlife conflict? "The others, if they're alive, are out there, still fighting," he insisted, his voice trembling with the effort. His eyes were wide, almost frantic. There was a story in them that Alyra couldn't fully understand. Something happened out there, something that was pushing him past his limits. The strange thing, though, was the way he continued to look at her. There was no panic in his gaze, no fear. Instead, there was a kind of reverence, as if he saw her as the answer to some question he hadn't yet fully asked. Alyra tried to pull her arm free, but his grip tightened, the strange sensation of his touch sending an unexpected jolt through her. It wasn't just the human strength that caught her off guard. It was the way his touch affected her, something completely outside her clinical training. "You need to rest," she said, her voice firm as she gently pried his fingers from her arm. "We'll send a search team for your companions, but right now, you need to heal." For a brief moment, she saw a flash of frustration in his eyes before he allowed her to pull away. "I don't need to rest," he muttered, his voice cracking with exhaustion. "I can't rest. There's more at stake." Alyra stood there, watching him closely as the words registered in her mind. There was something undeniably compelling about the human in front of her, something that didn't just challenge her medical expertise, but seemed to stir something within her that she hadn't expected. Something personal. As she watched him fight against his own body's needs, pushing through his pain with an intensity that felt foreign to her, she realized that this was no ordinary human. He was not only fighting for his life, but for the lives of those he cared for, his team, his comrades. His resilience was undeniable, and as much as she hated to admit it, she felt a deep, inexplicable pull toward him. The more she tried to distance herself, the more her body betrayed her, responding to the human's presence in a way she couldn't ignore. But that was just the beginning. The true shock lay ahead, a shocking discovery that would change everything, unraveling the carefully constructed boundaries Alyra had always maintained between patient and healer. Alyra's mind raced as she processed the human's words. His insistence on being strong, despite the clear signs of exhaustion, was unlike any patient she had ever encountered. Most beings, especially those injured as severely as he had been, would have immediately given in to the comfort of rest. But not this human. His grip tightened around her wrist once more, the intensity in his eyes betraying the fragile state of his body. "You don't understand," he rasped. "They need me. I can't afford to let them down." Alyra pulled back slightly, her own body now reflecting an unusual sense of unease. The human's voice, raw and full of grit, seemed to reverberate within her in ways she wasn't accustomed to. His unwavering resolve struck her in a place she had not anticipated, perhaps even where her professional distance had always kept her guarded. She had seen countless patients, many of them critically injured or severely ill, yet none had ever invoked this sense of urgency in her. But that was the least of the mystery surrounding this human. As the healing devices continued to whir and beep around them, performing their delicate work on his wounds, Elira's eyes kept flicking toward his clothing. There was something strange about the way the human had been dressed, almost like a piece of the puzzle was missing. His clothes, though torn from his ordeal, seemed strangely unremarkable. They were simple, utilitarian, but there was something about the way he had them draped, something protective in the way they seemed to hug his form. What's hidden under here? Elira muttered to herself, barely audible over the hum of the machinery. She had been treating the external wounds, but something about his body, the way it reacted to the serum, hinted at more than just physical injury. Eli's eyes, his name was Eli, she remembered, flickered in her direction. What do you mean? She caught herself, realizing how far her thoughts had wandered. Nothing, she said quickly, her clinical instincts kicking in again. I'm just checking on your vitals. But inside, her mind couldn't help but wonder. What are you hiding, Eli? Chapter 2, A Dangerous Alliance. The revelation that Eli carried the cure inside him shifted everything for both him and Elira. The stakes had grown far higher than either of them had anticipated. Eli wasn't just a patient anymore. He was the key to a much larger problem, a problem that affected an entire species. As Elira processed the implications of this, she also realized that the dangers surrounding Eli's condition wasn't just biological, it was political, too. Where is your team? Elira asked as she moved to the station's data terminal, trying to access any information about Eli's companions. The search had to be swift. They couldn't afford to waste time. My team was scattered after the attack, Eli explained. They're out there, waiting for me. We were tracking a rare form of a parasitic organism, and we discovered something that could change the balance of power across the galaxy. But someone or something didn't want us to finish our work. Elira's eyes narrowed as she accessed more data. And you think the answers lie in your team? Or in the parasite? Eli's gaze met hers, his expression grim. I think the answers are hidden in both. The news that Eli's team was scattered, each member dealing with injuries and possibly hidden threats, weighed heavily on Elira's shoulders. This was no longer just about medical care. This was a race against time, a quest to save Eli's team and understand the deeper, darker forces at play. As the situation unfolded, Elira found herself more and more entangled in Eli's struggle, not just as a healer, but as a partner in a fight she never expected. Elira's fingers flew over the controls of the data terminal, quickly pulling up a map of the Aether system. She pinpointed the last known locations of Eli's team based on the signals they had sent before their communications were severed. Their signals had gone dark, leaving only a trail of cryptic data clues that could lead them to the answers they sought. The remote jungles of Aether were vast, filled with dangerous creatures and treacherous terrain, but it was also home to a wealth of hidden resources. The possibilities for discovery were limitless, and Elira understood now that Eli's team was on the verge of uncovering something enormous, something far beyond a simple medical breakthrough. Your team is still alive, Elira said, her voice firm as she turned to face Eli. I found their last coordinates. We can track them down, but we'll need to move fast. I'm not sure how much time you have left, Eli. Your body is healing at an accelerated rate, but that device, whatever it is, it's not infinite. It's only a matter of time before it starts to fail, and we need to figure out how to stabilize it before it's too late. Eli nodded, his expression set in determination. We don't have time to wait. The parasites we were tracking, they're not just a biological hazard. They could be weaponized, used to destabilize entire systems. That's why they've been silenced. The people behind this don't want anyone to know about the cure inside me or the research we've uncovered. Elira's heart raced as she processed the weight of Eli's words. This wasn't just a medical issue, it was a galactic one. The stakes had grown exponentially, and Elira knew she had to prepare herself for what lay ahead. Her role as a healer had always been defined by the safety of her patients. But this was different. She had never been forced to play such a high-stakes game before. We'll have to be careful, Elira warned, her voice steady despite the turmoil rising within her. You're not the only one who's being hunted. There are forces out there who will stop at nothing to get their hands on that parasite, on the cure you carry. We'll need a plan. Eli's jaw tightened, but there was a hint of a smile on his lips. I think we can handle whatever comes our way. Chapter 3, Into the Heart of the Jungle. The next morning, Elira and Eli prepared to leave the safety of the medical research station. The sterile, metallic halls had never felt more like a prison than now. The world beyond was wild, uncharted, and dangerous. Yet, in some strange way, it called to them both. They had no choice but to venture into the jungle, the key to finding Eli's team, and perhaps the key to saving the galaxy itself, was buried there. Elira gathered her gear, medical supplies, weapons, and tools for navigating the jungle terrain. The Elther jungle was treacherous, a labyrinth of towering trees and thorny vines, with creatures that could tear a being apart in seconds. It was the perfect place for secrets to be hidden if you knew where to look. Eli had recovered enough from his injuries to stand and move around. Though he still moved cautiously, the effects of the device embedded in his side lingering. Elira could see that the weight of their mission was settling in on him. The device, which had initially been a miracle, was now a ticking time bomb. The question that loomed over them was how much longer it could sustain him. If the device malfunctioned, there would be no way to reverse the damage. "Are you sure you're up for this?" Elira asked, her tone soft but laced with concern. "We're heading straight into a war zone. It's not going to be easy." Eli gave her a half-smile. "I'm not sure I ever signed up for anything easy." His eyes flickered to the jungle outside. "But I've come this far. I won't let my team down." The jungle stretched out before them, its thick canopy casting shadows over the landscape. The air was dense with humidity, the scent of damp earth and alien plant life filling their nostrils. Every step they took seemed to be followed by the whisper of something unseen, a rustle in the underbrush, the flicker of a shadow above. Elira's senses were heightened, her mind sharp. She was used to the cold, calculated work of a medical facility, not the unpredictable nature of the jungle. But she had a job to do, and her instinct told her that she and Eli were being watched. It was a feeling she couldn't shake, the sense that they were not alone. As they pushed deeper into the jungle, they encountered obstacles at every turn. The underbrush was thick, making it difficult to move quickly. Elira hacked at the vines with a machete, while Eli moved ahead, clearing the path and marking their trail. The heat was suffocating, and their progress was slow, but neither of them stopped. They couldn't afford to. Hours passed, and they finally reached a clearing. In the center, a makeshift camp had been set up. It was small, but there were signs that someone had been there recently: footprints in the dirt, discarded food rations, and a half-burned fire. Elira's heart skipped a beat. They were close. "There's no one here," Elira said, scanning the area for any signs of life. "But they were here recently." Eli crouched down, studying the ground. "They were attacked. We need to keep moving." Suddenly, a low growl rumbled from the trees above. Elira's heart raced as a massive creature leapt from the shadows, landing with a deafening thud in front of them. Its body was sleek, covered in dark scales, with piercing yellow eyes that glowed in the low light. The creature's elongated limbs and powerful claws made it appear more like a predator than anything Elira had ever encountered. Before she could react, Eli stepped forward, his body tensed, ready to fight. But Elira grabbed his arm, stopping him. "We can't fight this thing," she whispered, her eyes scanning the creature. "We need to find another way." The creature hissed, its sharp teeth bared, but it didn't attack. Instead, it circled them, sizing them up. Elira's mind raced. The jungle was alive with danger, but she had to outthink the beast. Without warning, Eli pulled something from his belt, a strange, metallic object, almost like a flare gun. He aimed it at the creature, firing a shot that emitted a bright, flashing light. The creature froze for a moment, its body tense, before it turned and fled back into the jungle, disappearing into the trees with a final growl. Eli let out a breath, his body still tense. "That should keep it away for now. But we don't have much time." Elira nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. The jungle was not only filled with strange creatures, it was also filled with secrets, and Eli's team was somewhere out there, waiting to be found. "Let's keep moving," Elira said, her voice steady. "We have to find them before this gets worse." With the jungle surrounding them, and danger lurking at every corner, Elira knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. The stakes were higher than they had ever imagined, and the cure that Eli carried hidden inside him was the key to everything. But there were forces working against them, and the deeper they went into the jungle, the more dangerous it would become. But Elira wasn't ready to back down. Not now. Not when they were so close. The jungle closed in around them as Elira and Eli pressed onward, each step bringing them deeper into the unknown. The oppressive humidity weighed down on them, the air thick with moisture, and the dense foliage made it difficult to move at any pace faster than a crawl. Their goal was clear: find Eli's team, uncover the secrets behind the parasite, and survive the dangers lurking in the shadows. But the deeper they went, the more Elira felt a gnawing unease. Something was watching them, something that was far more dangerous than the wildlife. Every so often, the jungle would fall into an eerie silence, the usual buzz of insects and the rustle of leaves vanishing as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Elira felt it, too, the growing tension in the air, the awareness of unseen eyes. Eli's sharp instincts hadn't missed it either. He had been unusually quiet, his gaze darting from one shadow to another, his hand always near the weapon strapped to his side. The flare gun had been their first line of defense, but they both knew that it wouldn't protect them forever. They needed to reach the team before it was too late. Eli stopped suddenly, his hand shooting up to signal Elira to freeze. She followed his lead, staying as still as possible, her heart pounding in her chest. Her eyes searched the jungle around them, and that's when she saw it, a flicker of movement. Something large, hidden among the trees, its outline barely visible against the thick foliage. It wasn't an animal this time, this was something much more sinister. "There's someone ahead," Eli whispered, his voice barely audible, his breath shallow. Elira nodded, her mind racing. They had been moving in a direction that should have led them to the last known coordinates of Eli's team, but the closer they got, the more it seemed like someone or something was waiting for them. She had been trained to deal with medical emergencies, not military confrontations or covert operations. But Eli wasn't just a patient anymore. He was her partner in this, and together, they had to face whatever was ahead. "We need to be cautious," Elira said, her voice low. "We don't know if this is an ally or an enemy. Let's take the high ground." They moved carefully, climbing a nearby ridge that gave them a clear vantage point of the clearing ahead. As they crept to the top, Elira's breath caught in her throat as she saw the truth of the situation laid out before them. Eli's team wasn't just lost, they were trapped. In the center of the clearing, a makeshift camp was set up, but it was surrounded by a group of heavily armed individuals. They weren't the friendly researchers they had hoped to find. They were mercenaries, their faces hidden behind dark visors, their bodies encased in protective armor. The leader, a tall figure in the middle of the camp, was giving orders, while the rest of his team kept their weapons trained on the captured humans. Eli's team, bound and kneeling, were surrounded by these mercenaries, and it was clear from their posture that they were not being treated as allies. Elira's heart sank as she watched the scene unfold. Her first instinct was to rush in, to help them, but she knew it would be a death sentence. They had to find a way to get close without being seen, without alerting the mercenaries to their presence. "We need to get them out," Eli murmured, his voice a blend of determination and frustration. "Now." Elira turned to him, meeting his gaze. The determination in his eyes was unmistakable. He had never backed down before, and he wasn't about to start now. "We will," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "But we have to be smart about this. If we charge in without a plan, we'll get caught. And they'll know who you are. They'll want that cure." Eli clenched his fists, the tension in his posture betraying the anger he was holding back. "I don't care if they know. I'll fight them all if I have to." Elira placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. "I know, but we can't afford to act rashly. We need a way to neutralize them without drawing attention." For a long moment, they both watched the mercenaries, studying their movements. Elira's mind raced, running through every scenario, every possible outcome. Then, a thought hit her. She turned to Eli with a glint of hope in her eyes. "I have an idea. It's risky, but it might work." Eli looked at her, raising an eyebrow. "What's the plan?" "We need to create a distraction," she said. "I can use the medical equipment from your pack. There's a chemical I can synthesize that will disorient them, make them temporarily blind. If we time it right, we can neutralize the guards, and you'll be able to get to your team." Eli nodded, his mind already processing the plan. "And if they don't go down as easily as you think, then we improvise," Elira replied, her tone unwavering. They spent the next hour setting up their plan. Elira used the medical supplies in her pack to synthesize a blinding agent, mixing the components carefully. She knew the mercenaries would be difficult to handle, But if they were blinded for even a few seconds, it could give them the edge they needed. With the chemical ready, they made their move, creeping down the ridge and into position behind a cluster of large boulders. Eli, once again taking the lead, moved with purpose, his every step calculated. Elira followed closely behind, her heart racing as she watched the mercenaries in the clearing. They were too focused on the captured team members, too confident in their position, to notice the two figures creeping closer. The moment was almost upon them. Elira took a deep breath, steadying her hand as she prepared to launch the chemical canister. "On my signal," she whispered to Eli. He nodded, his eyes never leaving the mercenaries. They waited in the tense silence, knowing that one wrong move could turn the tide against them. Elira's fingers tightened around the trigger, her heart thumping in her chest. "Now," she hissed. She activated the device, and the canister shot forward, landing perfectly in the center of the mercenary group. It released a bright flash of light and a cloud of smoke, enveloping the camp in an instant. The mercenaries stumbled back, disoriented, their hands flying up to shield their eyes as they were temporarily blinded. "Now!" Eli shouted. Without wasting another moment, Eli sprinted forward, his muscles straining as he charged toward his team. Elira followed close behind, her own breath quickening as they reached the captured humans. The mercenaries were still reeling, their vision impaired, allowing Eli and Elira to free the team and subdue them with quick, precise movements. Within moments, the team was untied, their eyes wide with disbelief at their sudden liberation. "Let's move," Elira ordered, her voice steady as she helped one of the injured team members to their feet. "We don't have much time before they regain their sight." With Eli's team free, they made a hasty retreat, disappearing back into the jungle as the mercenaries stumbled to recover. Elira's mind raced with adrenaline as they ran, knowing they had made a narrow escape. But their troubles weren't over. The mercenaries would regroup, and the pursuit was already beginning. As they reached the safety of a hidden cave, Elira paused, catching her breath. She looked at Eli, who was now surrounded by his team, his expression one of relief and exhaustion. The mission was far from over, but for the first time in days, Elira allowed herself a moment of hope. "We're not done yet," Eli said, looking back at the jungle behind them. "But we're closer than ever." Elira nodded, her resolve hardening. "And now we have the team. Together, we'll finish what we started." Chapter 4, The Final Push. The jungle seemed to hold its breath as they made their way deeper into the heart of the planet. With Eli's team reunited, they now faced the true enemy, those who sought to control the cure inside Eli, the secret hidden between his clothes, inside his body. But this was no longer just about survival. It was about taking the fight to those who would use such power for their own ends. They moved quickly, their destination clear, the facility where the research had been conducted, where the parasite could be studied and understood. It was deep within enemy territory now, a place where their enemies awaited, ready to unleash everything they had. But Elira, Eli, and his team weren't going to back down. Together, they would uncover the truth and ensure the cure didn't fall into the wrong hands. The final battle awaited, but Elira felt a renewed strength. The journey had tested them all, but it had also bonded them in ways they hadn't imagined. Now, they were ready for whatever came next. The story was only beginning, and Elira knew they would face their greatest challenge yet. But with the team together, and the cure still hidden within Eli, there was no turning back. They would win, or they would die trying.